Vamos!
The Street Fighter's done it again. Sergio Perez wins in Azerbaijan to take his 6th career victory to beat his teammate.
King of the streets.
Well done, guys.
Red Bull Racing dominated the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, taking a commanding 1-2 finish. Sergio Perez coming home ahead of his teammate Max Verstappen. Checo, very well done to you. Sprint victory yesterday, winner of the Grand Prix today. What a weekend for you.
Yeah, it was a great weekend overall. You know, we delivered when we had to. It was a lot of pressure, a lot of I felt that with this format, you know, it puts a lot of stress on the drivers, on the engineers, mechanics. So the way we delivered over the weekend was great. Yesterday we executed a good race, but I think today the way we push each other, Max, myself, pretty much from lap 1 onwards. Once we got Charles, we were basically, it was a race between us from the start to the end, you know. And I think that first stint was a big key to my race today.
It was a very intense battle, similar to Saudi in many ways. How did it feel in the cockpit?
Very intense. You know, first stint was super intense between just making sure I stayed in that DRS. And once I was in the DRS, just pushing Max to make sure that he used his tires. And I think that was one of the keys. But then once we were on the hard compound, it was really hard, you know, to keep Max behind because, I knew that as soon as he will get DRS, and that's it really. So just to keep him behind the DRS was a massive challenge, and we were pushing each other massively. We really gave it all, lap after lap, and I'm really happy to come away with this victory.
It really was an emphatic victory. Welcome everybody to F1 Nation with me, Tom Clarkson, and Damon Hill, and a little later in the show, Juan Fossaroli from ESPN. We're joined in no particular order during the show by Helmut Marko, Jean Alesi, Esteban Ocon, Mark Webber and Franz Tost. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, Damon, it feels like we have a proper championship on our hands now. Is that how you feel coming out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix?
We want a championship, don't we? We want to see Formula One going all the way through the season with a tight battle. And if we've only got 2 Red Bull drivers, that's still good, isn't it? We've seen some fantastic titanic battles with dominant teams, but with the 2 drivers within those teams being the contenders. And so to see the gap close again after the sprint weekend that we've had here in Baku, and, you know, going forward, we can go to the next race thinking, well, what's going to happen next? You know, I think it's a good thing.
And do you think Checo has proved this weekend that he really has got the measure of Max?
Yeah, I mean, Saudi, I was surprised at how he managed to hold him at bay, you know, in that race. And so, but one swallow doesn't make a summer, does it? But he's done it again. He's done it again here. Okay, got lucky with the safety car. Max would have been out there, but probably if Max hadn't been unlucky with the safety car and was leading on track position on Sergio, and there were 2 Red Bulls up there, but Sergio was second. I'm not sure that Sergio's got the strength to bring the fight to Max in a long distance race, because they were very evenly matched, and I just think you could see that the guy behind was probably struggling more than the guy in front.
Helmut Marko's just walking past us right now. Helmut, just very quickly, can I have a very quick chat? This weekend seems to have confirmed to all of us that you guys, whatever Ferrari, whatever the others throw at you, you have got a rocket ship this year. Has it confirmed it in your mind, or did you know it already?
No, you see, both pole position went to Ferrari, so they are coming closer. And in the last couple of the laps, Alonso and Leclerc did the same lap times like we didn't slow down. So it's a hard fight, and you have always keep pushing.
I was just saying before you arrived, Helmut, that if the safety car had worked out differently and Max had got out ahead of Sergio, I can't see Sergio actually having passed Max. So Max was stuck behind Sergio for the race as well. But, you know, I think that they seem to be quite evenly matched, but I still think Max is quicker over race distance. If you had clear air?
I mean, he was unlucky with the safety car, yes. But Sergio on the street circuit, he has the most podiums here. So don't underestimate Sergio. He changed a lot since he came to us. he started working.
Oh, you're taking the credit now.
No, we're not taking the credit, but before he was a Mexican race driver who was enjoying life. He still does, but he does the necessary work.
You're showing him how to win.
Yeah.
Do you see a change in his hunger? Do you feel Sergio is more hungry this year than he has been in either of the previous years?
Last year, he was looking how many races were won by the Rodriguez brothers.
Should we get him out of the rain? It started to. I mean, this is the classic, isn't it? It's rained after the race, not during the race. But the heavens have opened here in Baku.
And he's the most successful driver from Mexico now. And they have a long history in good drivers.
Decent 80th birthday present for you.
Very decent and a proper one, not the 9th or 10th cake I got. Wherever I went, restaurant, bar, everywhere a cake showed up.
Helmut, many thanks. Good to chat to you. Interesting to hear Helmut say that Checo
Learned a lot.
Yeah, he's learned a lot, and there's almost change in his attitude. I feel is what Helmut was saying there.
Because they also said the similar thing about Daniel Ricciardo coming back to them, didn't they? And they put him in the sim and they've looked at the way he's driving. And they were saying he's picked up lots of bad habits. We don't know where he's been, but they've ruined him, and now they're reteaching him, they're retraining the driver. So at Red Bull, they don't just provide you with the car; they actually teach you to drive as well.
And so Checo is now 2 wins from 4. Max is 2 wins from 4. Just the 6 points separating them. We go to another street track in Miami next week.
You do, I don't.
You don't. I'm going to Miami. Very much looking forward to it. But I mean, Checo seems to me to be the street circuit king. And I see no reason why it can't be as close when we go there.
He's had this reputation, hasn't he, of being very, very light on the throttle and able to judge the wheel spin and whisper the tyres. And I think that is still has been a factor around here. He's also committed and incredibly precise. If you watch his driving, he doesn't leave much of a margin.
He certainly doesn't. When he touched the wall on the outside of 15, he's just said in the press conference that actually it helped me a little bit. I was having a little bit too much understeer, and that just sort of nudged things at the front in the right direction.
Yeah, he said he gave it a hefty clonk, but then he didn't come, he didn't actually say to anyone on the radio. And so the engineer, it's incredible, isn't it? They're sitting back in the garage, they're going, what the hell's that? They've just seen a big spike on their data, accelerometers or something, showing that the cars suddenly jump sideways. And they decide to call him up and go, have you done anything at turn 15, by the way? He's leading a Grand Prix, and they just want to know why they've got this.
And he doesn't want to fess up, does he?
And he goes, I just hit the wall.
Another thing Helmut said there is that, Ferrari have got the 2 poles this weekend. Are they getting closer? I mean, yes, that's a fact. They did get both poles, but, Max was, 20 seconds ahead of Charles at the end, and Charles said after the race that he actually thinks Aston Martin were faster than Ferrari over a race distance.
I think, Fernando was catching him and closing, and then he got in dirty air, so probably yes. It's extraordinary. They've got the car that can do the lap time in quali. But something happens to it over a run. It's taking too much out of the tyres, and then they're losing performance that way. So if you look at tyre degradation, if you draw a straight line, it's pretty much a straight line usually, roughly speaking. Theirs is a steeper one, declining
Except
or increasing lap time.
In defence of Ferrari, Charles, with 6 laps to go, set the fastest lap of the race. Now, clearly he'd been managing his tyres, but there was pace in that car at the end of the race.
Yeah, but they can't use the pace. That's the point. If they push, suddenly the temperatures go up and the tyre degrades more quickly, and they just will struggle. They have to do too much recovery of the tyre, and then they're vulnerable to attack. So that's why they're playing this really, what my old teammate from Formula 3 would call trindly, Martin Donnelly. He had a word for the kind of driving where you have to be really careful but you're not really aggressive, and he called it trindly.
Now look, talking of teammates, Damon, you know what it's like to fight an intra-team battle for a world championship. You against your teammate. If we're just looking at Checo versus Max, at least for the foreseeable, how do they keep that friendly? They said after the race that there is mutual respect.
No,
but there's only mutual respect until there isn't.
Well, I saw them did the post-race interview, so I saw them get out the car, and Max went over saw his own mechanics, and then he gave Checo a hug, actually. Gave him a big handshake and a hug, and so...
it's well done, mate. You beat me fair and square.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I think there is respect there, but Checo's got the resilience, things bounce off him. He's got rhino skin. I think that's really important.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. There was some big news this past week of Charles Leclerc climbing the download charts with his new music. Charles took up the piano in 2020 and has openly said how it helps him clear his mind and focus on himself and his needs away from the racetrack. He's not the only driver that I've spoken to in the past that turns to their favourite hobby to help carve out some much needed me time. But you don't need to have the demands of a busy race calendar on your shoulders to feel the need for some space. Many of us are so busy looking after others that our own needs get overlooked. Stretching yourself too thin can often lead to feelings of overwhelm and burnout. And if that's something you recognise in your own life, therapy can be a huge help in overcoming some of the difficult emotions that might arise. It can give you the tools to find more balance in your life, set boundaries, and learn positive coping skills. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great starting point. It exists entirely online, so it's convenient and flexible, and you can arrange your sessions to suit your schedule. All you need to do is fill in a brief questionnaire online, and BetterHelp will match you with a licensed therapist based on the answers you provide. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/F1Nation today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/F1Nation. Well, we've just strolled past Ferrari, the first pole of 2023 with Charles Leclerc. It really has been a horrid start to the season for them, and then it was tin hats on coming into this weekend for the senior management there, with all the talk of Laurent Mekies, their racing director, off to AlphaTauri at the end of the year. Of course, David Sanchez already confirmed going. Charles Leclerc being talked about going to Mercedes. Toto not denying it over the weekend.
It's almost like there was a fire at Ferrari and people were running for the door. But I'm sure that's not exactly what was going on. But I think I have been impressed with Fred Vasseur. He keeps on a cheery demeanour and a wry sense of humour about the whole thing. And he's probably, at the moment, thinks he's in an earthquake or something. He's holding onto the table. But eventually it'll pass and it'll settle down and he'll be able to piece things back together again. And this performance they've seen in their car on the street circuit here, there's signs of encouragement. But it's again, as I said, it's the race pace where, that Red Bull can obviously comply the tyre or just have more downforce. It's not sliding as much throughout a race. They probably are sacrificing ultimate one-lap pace in order to be quick in the race. So if you applied that to the Ferrari, you'd probably see a Ferrari qualifying 8th, or 6th.
Damon, I also think we're just, as you can hear the music in the background, everyone's busy packing up because there's a lot of air freight that needs to get off to Miami as soon as possible. But
it's mad, isn't it?
I would say Charles Leclerc is driving better than I've ever seen him.
Well,
those two qualifying pole positions this weekend, outrageously brilliant.
Yes, and he's not doing not so many of the silly mistakes where I always think there's two types of drivers. There's ones that you have to push to be fast and then they crash. And then there's the ones that crash and you have to get them slow down so that they don't crash and then they're still fast. And he's one of those. He's blindingly quick. He's so mature and confident, but he is only 25. So I think he's getting to that point where he's being confident with the team as well as anything else.
I was very surprised at the gap between the two Ferrari drivers this weekend. It seemed like Carlos Sainz was just struggling all weekend. But, Damon, I see a former Ferrari driver in front of me, Jean Alesi. Jean, it's lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm fine. You are with Damon, the superstar?
I think I'm with Tom.
Okay.
Jean, we've just been discussing what a turbulent build-up to this weekend it was for Ferrari, with all the talk of, is Charles going to go to Mercedes? What's going on with the senior management in terms of staff movements? You've been here, you've done it with Ferrari. What's your assessment of where they're at?
Damon, maybe you can help me, because I think the dream for a lot of drivers is to be a Ferrari driver, and Charles is in Ferrari. I don't think you want to leave.
I got a question for you, John. I was thinking about street tracks, and I remember you in the Tyrrell at Monaco, and there are some guys who liked street tracks. You liked street tracks, didn't you? You seem
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Why?
He has to fit with the driving style, but when you like to have, let's say, the car on the nose, he helps you a lot, because it's all about anticipation. You need to have, as quick as possible, your steering wheel straight, So if you go into the corner with a little slide, you open the steering wheel earlier and you have a better speed exit. So that is maybe the key of being fast on the
because Charles is, on this, I think in qualifying trim around, he's blindingly fast. Karun Chunduk says he thinks he's the fastest over one lap of all the drivers at the moment.
It's true. And immediately we found out in the turn one, he was already on the limit. He was already kissing the barrier. And that was already a message for the lap time he had at the end.
Can I ask you a question, right? Jean, your decision to go to Ferrari and not Williams all the way back in the day, that opened the door for you, didn't it, old man?
Probably, yeah. That's about,
I left the room for Damon, but no.
What's that game where you have to move all the letters around and get them in the right order? It's like someone else has to move first, and then you can move to the next one. But Jean was in Formula 1 way before me, so I had to wait for these guys to move, get out of the way.
Well, John, it's lovely to see you.
And especially you together. You're a good couple.
Very kind. Thank you, John. See you soon. Look, Damon, what about Mercedes? Lewis Hamilton comes home in the race P6.
Yeah.
George Russell, fastest lap, P8.
Yeah.
I mean, after what they did in Melbourne, particularly George starting on the front row of the grid there, I had high hopes for them here because the new surface that was on the track here in Azerbaijan, I'd been told, wasn't dissimilar to Melbourne, to Albert Park. So I thought maybe they were going to be as quick, but no, it's been...
Yeah, they're still
what are we,
hanging
third
on.
quickest, fourth quickest car here, maybe?
They haven't slipped that much further back. I think they've, at the start of the season, it was shock horror. They're not competitive, and then there was all the pressure from the press and pressure on the management, and they seem to put in place the changes. They've got James Allison back, and so I think the heat is off them for a little bit, but the results yet to come. But they've got one at Imola, haven't they? Got a package coming.
Well, they will tell you that they have little bits coming at every race. But yeah, Imola is where we're going to see the sort of noticeable difference. I think side pods and things like that.
Both drivers drove well. I mean, George has had that, argy-bargy with Max, which was controversial. Maybe he was a bit impetuous, but nevertheless, that is racing. He showed that he's going for the gap. As Ayrton said, if you're not going for the gap, you're not a racing driver.
Well, you're referring to the sprint race there, of course, where on that opening lap, they did have that kerfuffle going into, in fact, Max is just coming past us now, chatting to Liam Lawson, who is the team's third driver. But is rubbing racing, I suppose, is my question to you, in Formula One, or is this a non-contact sport? Did George Russell do anything wrong in that sprint race when him and Max came together and Max was left with a hole in his side pod?
Since they've made the cars more robust, banging wheels is seen as acceptable. But, when you go into the side pod of someone and you damage their aero and potentially put them out of the race as well, then that is probably a bit too much. I would like to see less contact, but it's very difficult to ask people to provide the entertaining racing and not take any risks and not take any chances. The taking of a risk implies that there's going to be times when it doesn't work, and one person, you could come off badly or the other person come off badly. I mean, I certainly don't think it should be encouraged. I don't think that, you should try to get them to barge into each other going into corners, 90-degree corners on street tracks.
The FIA's view, I think, was that George was alongside him. What else is he meant to do?
Yeah, but
if we don't allow what happened in that sprint race, then there will be no overtaking in Formula One.
I mean, you could definitely argue that Max was on the outside. He knew he was going to be a compromised position. He could have backed out of it, and he didn't. He chose to hug the outside and leave enough room, or what he thought was enough room for George. But that is not an exact science. They're very good drivers, but you can't be sure every time that it's going to work.
And also, I know that Max referred to George as Princess George in the Dutch media after that sprint race. It's all playground stuff, isn't it?
Playground stuff.
But does, I don't know, even in your day, does it get personal, something like that? Did you have, or do you just ignore what other drivers are saying?
They're young lads. They're 25 years old, and they fought in these competitions all their life, and they make it known that they're not to be messed with. You can't be the weak link, can you? You can't be the guy that could be rolled over. So they do, puff their chests out from time to time and go and you get those confrontations. And sometimes a word can be very hurtful. Sometimes it doesn't. It's off a duck's back.
The rain is still falling. We are still getting wet. We're walking down the paddock. And actually, who's going to go up to Esteban Ocon first, you or me?
Blimey.
It hasn't been a great weekend for Alpine. They turned up with a new floor and various other upgrades. They had high hopes, as anyone who listened to last week's show will know from our chat with Otmar Safnauer, the team principal, and then it just unravelled from that first practice session.
I literally was chatting with Alan Permain just here at the start of the weekend. I was saying, God, I bet you're glad you've managed to have 3 weeks to fix all the rubbish that you got in back from Australia. And they were saying, and they're really optimistic, and it's just been a mare. Where's it all gone?
Yeah, that was your Francais coming out. Now, Esteban, do you believe in luck?
I think there is an element of it, but it never comes by itself. So, not completely, no.
What about bad luck? I mean, it's been a pretty rough weekend for you guys.
I think you need to provoke the bad luck, and yes, we had a part of it, but it was a very disrupted weekend in general for us, and there are a lot of things that we need to review and analyze to come back stronger in general. So,
how were the upgrades? I mean, I suppose the race for you today was as much as anything a bit of a test session. Is that right?
Well, not really. We were trying to get back through the field and try an all-in strategy. That was the term, really. And it was working well until that moment that we had to pit, unfortunately, and the safety car didn't come at the right time, like it did on the rest of the weekend also. So it was not completely a test session, but there is a lot for us to review. I don't think it is the true pace of the car. I think we had more in hands, but obviously, we didn't put it together and we didn't use the potential properly this weekend.
Do we need to go to a permanent racetrack? Because it seems that these street tracks, there are so many variables. Do we need to wait until we get to Imola before we really see what you can do?
No, I don't think it is an excuse. In general, street tracks or not, we should be able to fight for points. But, we had only one session. We did 3 laps in that session in practice. And, from there on, we had to change the setup because it was a critical issue that we had to fix. And things kept getting worse, each session. And obviously we started in the pit lane both races, so it makes things even more difficult. So, a weekend not to forget completely because there's a lot to learn from it. But the good thing is that we can turn things around next week, and we are not sleeping, 3 weeks on a difficult weekend like that.
It's down to you guys, isn't it? The drivers, you've got to lift the spirits of the team because they put in so much hard work, and to get a weekend where you just get kicked back the whole time is very tough, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure, and also at the factory, to bring these new updates, these new floors that we had this weekend. There's been a huge amount of work going on, and obviously we are not happy with the outcome of this weekend, but we win and lose together. We lost this weekend. That's how sport is sometimes.
Do you feel the intensity's gone up for the drivers? Are these harder weekends than a conventional one?
Yeah, you don't want that every weekend, especially on back-to-backs. And I think the most tricky time of the weekend is definitely after that FP1 moment where everything is rushed to get the setup in the car. But also the Saturday morning where you have the sprint quali shootout. And that moment we didn't drive, we didn't have a warm-up in the morning. And going into quali with no laps, that's something I've never seen before.
Cold shower to wake you up.
Exactly. Cold shower, not a lot of breakfast, and go for it.
Esteban, thank you very much for talking to us. Have a good trip to Miami. We'll see you next weekend. What a rough weekend for those guys. Actually, I thought he spoke very well then, just about what lessons can be learned. And
very, very good.
But also, he's got his feet under the table at Alpine. For someone like Pierre Gasly, who's still new, how hard is it when it's just you keep getting these setbacks?
Well, that's part of the resilience you need to be a sports person, but particularly a sport like this where your equipment lets you down. Or some unforeseen kind of thing puts you out of contention. In other sports, you think about tennis, your racket very rarely, it does break, but you can replace it. Or someone decides to take you out in the first serve. It doesn't happen in those sports, whereas in Formula One, there's a lot of random chance involved, which is just, I suppose golf's a bit like that, but it's called the rub of the green, isn't it? You just have to soak it up. And sometimes it seems like it's never going to change and you keep getting bad weekends. And then suddenly out of the blue, bang, something happens and you're rejuvenated.
Talking of rejuvenated. Just in front of us, the two Red Bull drivers coming down from their debrief, I guess heading out for another team photo in the pit lane.
They'll be getting that well-deserved and all-important photo of victory. The whole team, 1-2 for them at this Grand Prix, and it will go on the wall, it'll go in the file, it'll go out to the press, it'll go out to the world. But they must feel an incredible sense of pride. And it's, you can hear them, the people who work for a team like that, they get their reward. We've just come from Alpine and we're going to the other end of the spectrum here at Red Bull where they enjoy success.
And the pit lane is not long, is it? The different moods you get literally from one garage to the next. We're looking at the Red Bull boys went into garage 9 here at Baku, and in garage 8 you've got Ferrari. They're packing up. A little bit of head scratching, number 55, that's Carlos Sainz. Carlos had a good race. He always seems to be better in the races than in qualifying, but he's probably thinking there was a bit too much of a gap to his teammate.
There was a stonking gap, wasn't it? Half a second or something. But there were two. This is where I get lost now. We had 2 qualifying sessions, so I can't remember which one I'm talking about.
But on the positives, he was pretty pumped up coming into the weekend, was Carlos Sainz, because he's going to play Augusta after the Miami Grand Prix.
After the Miami Grand Prix. So you work first, then play.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Before we continue debriefing the weekend in Baku, don't forget that next week we'll be racing in Miami. That's right, racing is back in full force, and you can keep across all of the F1 action this season with F1 TV Pro. Stream coverage of all sessions live and on demand. Enjoy exclusive features such as driver onboards, team radio, and live data insights for the ultimate viewing experience. And if you're looking to get behind the scenes of the Grand Prix race weekend, the F1 TV presenters have got you covered with plenty of team interviews, pre-race and technical shows. And it's available across your favourite devices, including Samsung, Apple TV, Roku and Amazon Fire TV, which is perfect if you want to set up multiple screens with live leaderboards and trackside data, allowing you to compare driver lap times while watching the action. You'll feel like you've got your very own pit wall, no matter where you're tuning in. For a limited time, fans in the Netherlands, the US, Canada and Brazil can trial F1 TV Pro for free for 7 days. Simply go to f1tv.com to sign up and take your race weekend to the next level. F1 TV Pro is only available in select territories, so please check the website for more details and full terms and conditions. The offer ends Sunday, the 7th of May. We're just going to grab Mark Webber as he strolls past. Look, Oscar Piastri, your boy, Mark. He comes home 11th. We know he's been ill. Talk of him losing 3 kilos this weekend. How big a performance was that?
Yeah, it was pretty solid, mate. I think Saturday in particular was very special, considering he was in all sorts of trouble during the day. And
how bad? Was he vomiting?
Oh, yeah, he was. We don't want to go into too much detail, TC, but it was not pretty. But
did he vomit in his helmet like you did once?
No, he didn't. But he knuckled down. The team did a great job. The doc did a great job. And as we know, as elite sports people, every now and again, you've got to. There's some bumps in the road sometimes with your health in terms of the travel we do, and he just got caught out here. He did well. I think some of the call-outs. I think his qualifying performance in Q3 on Friday was on the scrub tyre was, he didn't use the last set there, so that was a special session for him. He's been getting the most out of the car, really. The updates have worked well, so it was another huge weekend for him to put into the hard drive for future events.
And for McLaren, do you feel their season starts now?
Well, I think that they have definitely made some improvements, which they're happy with. Of course, no one in this paddock is resting on their laurels. We all know that everyone bringing upgrades is a broken record because everyone is. So you've just got to go out and deliver when you can. So I've got to go to the airport. TC, you're in great hands with the big man here. He looks excited too. Crack on.
I have no idea what you're talking about because you're walking too fast.
Hey, Mark, thank you. Safe travels.
What do you say?
See you at the next one. I see Oscar as a sort of mini-me now. When I look at Mark and Oscar, I see no difference because the fact that Oscar didn't bleat in the press about his illness, we all sort of had to find out. I feel that that's just a very Mark Webber thing to do. And I remember when Mark vomited in his helmet in a race back in the day, he just sort of got on with it. And Oscar's very much cut from the same cloth, isn't he?
There was a famous Monty Python sketch that involved Australians, but I'm not going to insult people by quoting it here. But the idea being that the Australians are made tough and they They don't easily complain about things. So I think definitely apply that to Mark. He's definitely puts himself through all sorts of tortures, like, cycling and running and breaking his leg and getting back in the car and all that stuff. So rubs off.
Now look, while we're talking McLaren, so Oscar Piastri comes home 11th and Lando Norris P9. They did bring those upgrades. The team were talking about sort of 0.2 of a second improvement, but much greater consistency with the tyres, things like that. I just asked Mark whether he felt McLaren's season starts now. It's almost as if this is the launch spec car for that team and they get going now.
I wonder whether that was the problem, whether there was a delay. They kind of, James Key was asked to leave, and why? Because he probably had some influence. These things don't just pop out of nowhere. So
that is the great irony.
Yeah.
This upgrade here this weekend would have been signed off when James was still at the team.
But reading between the lines, it seems to me that the decision to go down that route wasn't taken until it was too late to have him on at the start of the season. So I think maybe that was the problem. This is where they should have started, and then they could have carried on working. So they're 4 months, 5 months behind where they should be.
Yeah, but okay, the whole grid is behind. 9 teams are behind Red Bull, but actually, I think in terms of pace, McLaren are close enough now. There's no one out of range apart from maybe Red Bull.
Well, they are getting closer to being in that mix, aren't they, of the Ferrari and Aston bunch, and maybe Mercedes. I guess there's an interesting B group, isn't there? The A group is Red Bulls, and then behind them there's a B group of very strong teams, and then there's maybe a C group of.
Well, how big is the B group? I would put. You could almost put every team. Well, maybe bar 2, but that B group, that middle grid, as you call it, is huge this year.
Yeah, but you got the teams like Williams and Haas who occasionally put one in qualifying, but they just can't hold it in the race. So holding it in the race that's crucial. It's holding onto that slot you've bagged in qualifying throughout a 51 lap race here in Baku.
Now look who's joined us. You've been a busy man. It's Juan Fossaroli from ESPN. Good of you to join us, big man.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Damon. Just smell me, Red Bull over me, and really celebrating with Checo. What a performance yesterday and today.
Just incredible. I know that you get more access to Checo than anyone else on the grid. It's been a hell of a weekend for him. What's he been telling you?
Oh, I have the chance also to be with him very closely. This morning we have breakfast. He was very convinced that he can manage a win here. Obviously, maybe he got a little bit help of the safety car, but then the performance was incredible. Keeping behind Max Verstappen is not easy.
Do you think if Checo hadn't got the rub of the green with the safety car and that Max had come out ahead, do you think he could have passed Max Verstappen on the track today?
I don't know. Max suffered a lot with the tires also, no? And with the balance. And maybe Checo was a little bit more, on the tires. And he have a little thing in turn 15. And also Max, I think they were pushing very hard. Maybe, I don't know. When Max is in front with clean air, it's very strong too. I think it was a help. And when you have the chance, you have to do it. It's strange that the team doesn't notice that the car was there. It's easy to say now, no? But I don't know. Maybe too early. He was suffering with tires. That's what they call Max first.
Juan, we had Helmut Marko on the show earlier, and he said that Checo has learned a lot. He's learned how to win, and he's a very impressive man. Now, what has he learned since he's been at Red Bull?
I think he learned to deal with the team first, to make himself respect, because it's not easy to arrive to Red Bull after what happened with the rest of the drivers being by the side of Max Verstappen. And he learned a lot. And I think this year and the last year also, in one point of the year, he was like winning Monaco. He was very convinced he can win. And this year he started with that mentality. The last laps in Saudi Arabia was impressive like today, keeping Max behind with the same car. I know Max have started back foot also in Saudi Arabia. And he mentioned it when he won. The first thing he said, we cannot have the errors we have in Australia. Like he is thinking in the World Championship. And I think that's impressive about Checo.
He always seems to me as he's got confidence, but maybe do you think he's gained in self-belief a little bit here in the Red Bull team the last few years?
Yeah, well, I think that he grew that confidence with the team, together with the team, and he could prove in some racetrack, not all of them, he can beat Max, and he is convinced of that. Well, you know that, no? You've been with strong teammates also, and he can get a chance. I asked Horner before the start if it's going to be free, to fight both drivers. And he said the first thing is 1-2, and then they can fight. And I think that's a fair quote, no? I don't know what's going to happen from here to the next races, but we know everybody's calling him the king of the street circuits, no?
Are you?
No, I mean, me and I heard around here, and he have 6 wins and 5 are in the street circuits, and Singapore last year, Monaco. And now we have Miami, and then, Imola, but then Monaco again. And he have that confidence in this kind of racetracks. I think he's going to have a chance. But Max, Max is Max.
How much are you building Checo up at home? Are you selling him as world championship material? Are you getting everyone excited?
No, we're not selling him like world champion because we know how difficult it is to win a world championship. And more with a 2-time world champion in a team that is maybe based around Max Verstappen. But anyway, I think he have the chance. We're not going to build him like a world champion, but if he goes step by step, maybe he have the chance.
Now look, Damon's giving me the look that says...
The look of a man who's got to get a bus to the airport to catch a flight to go home.
You have. Do you know what? The wind's picked up.
It's howling, isn't it? What's going on?
Crazy times here in
leave.
Baku. Look, safe travels. Thank you, Damon, as ever.
And can you just... I've said congratulations to Checo anyway, but I mean, I've always been a Checo fan. I'm making a secret of it.
He has been a Checo fan.
I watched. I like the way he drives and the way he conducts himself as well. So, and it's fun going to Mexico.
Good surfing there, isn't it? Look, Damon, thank you so much. Adios. Juan, can you see anyone catching them this year, or do you think they're too far out the front?
Well, the good thing that maybe I heard Charles when I asked him in the pen, he said, I mean, I think Red Bull was, controlling a little bit the race, preserving the cars, and they were going flat out between Max and Checo. You can tell because they're hitting the wall. They're not like holding up some pace. And it's positive because we know that they're full throttle. They're trying to get the best of the cars and the last laps. And even if, I know it's a lot the distance with Ferrari, I think Ferrari coped to, finish the race, being in the first podium of the season. They found something, they got it last year and at one lap, and I think if they keep working on it, they're going to have a chance. They work in this 4 weeks. I think there's the best team that recover a little bit was Ferrari. They're far away yet, but I think they're very smart, and maybe we can see Ferrari, I don't think challenging for the World Championship, because if you hit first, it's going to be very difficult. But I don't know, maybe make the season a little bit more interesting.
Maybe in the second half, we could see them winning a few races when Red Bull have done enough, and they're starting to focus on 2024.
Yeah, and they have, the restrictions and the one tunnel and CVDF, and I think maybe there we can have at least Ferrari wins, or even Mercedes. Today they were a little bit far. Aston Martin also, they didn't, being like the first 3 races. They were very close to Charles, but because he was managing the tires. Then when they told him, you're free to go, he make the gap with Fernando. It's a shame, because if you pull out the 2 Red Bulls, we have a very tight...
It's so true. It's so true. It would be brilliant. Damon and I didn't really chat much about Aston Martin, so let's elaborate on the job that Alonso in particular has done this weekend. I mean, sensational overtake of Carlos Sainz in the race, and then putting pressure on Charles Leclerc throughout. First time we've had you on the pod this year. Are we seeing, the best Fernando for 10 years? The pace of that car has reinvigorated him, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. He was convinced. I don't know if from the beginning of the season it's going to be like this, but after the test, he's starting to think that it was possible, no? And even he thinks it's possible to fight for the championship.
Do you think he's still thinking that now?
I don't know. He can, obviously, he say now 24 and 25. You know how he's Alonso. He likes to, sometimes he knows when he makes some declarations, you know how he is. But like he did, he criticized Lewis, and then the last race after Australia, he said, what a driver. I cannot catch him. I was 2 seconds apart. He never made a mistake. And I think today he proved that he's not driving in a super manner. He's also thinking on Lance Stroll and the setup of the, brake balance.
The Lance, my brake balance suggestion, as I am now, I think it's a good help.
Yeah, copy, Fernando, copy, I will understood.
He have a vision a little bit different from the rest of the drivers, and he's enjoying it. I think that's the most important. That's the first time I see Alonso enjoying driving, enjoying being able to fight for the podium, and the win maybe become.
I see a great synergy between Fernando and that racing team, more than I felt he had at Alpine, certainly
for sure.
second time round at McLaren. They're all on the same page, and it's not often you say that with Fernando and the racing teams that he's driving for.
Yeah, I think he has full support of Lawrence Stroll. Even, Lance admire Fernando since he was little, and they have a very good relationship. I think he's feeling home, and I hope he can grab that 33rd win, because everybody's talking about that. Maybe they lost a little bit of ground. I thought in this 4 weeks, maybe they catch up a little bit more Red Bull. I think Ferrari step a little bit in front of them. But
I think that's track specific though, isn't
yeah,
it? It's
yeah,
a
for
little
sure.
bit
Yeah.
draggy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is a long straight. And
long straight, and Ferrari was very strong in the long straight. I mean, what amazed me is that Red Bull DRS is something that is incredible.
More to come from Baku in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce you to new Heineken Silver from the global beer partner of Formula One. Heineken Silver is the low-carb, low-calorie beer with all the taste and no bitter ending. It's a crisp, refreshing beer with only 3.2 grams of carbohydrate and 95 calories. It's a game changer. All the taste of a full-bodied beer with none of the bitter aftertaste. We know that lighter is usually better in Formula One, right? Teams do everything to make their cars as light as possible. Well, Heineken Silver is lighter than other beers. If you've ever felt a bit weighed down by a normal beer, Heineken Silver is for you. As well as developing this game-changing beer, Heineken Silver is also the title sponsor of the 2023 Las Vegas Grand Prix. And for our US listeners aged 21 and over, you can win a VIP experience at the race with Heineken Silver. Use the link in the episode description to enter and see full terms and conditions. Heineken Silver is made by Heineken, a global partner of Formula One. Remember the Heineken message you'll have seen on track. When you drive, never drink. Try new Heineken Silver at the track or in stores now. All the taste, no bitter endings, 3.2 grams of carbs and 95 calories. And what about AlphaTauri? Yuki Tsunoda once again coming home in P10. I see such a confident driver this year. I feel he's maybe the most improved driver on the grid. Would you agree?
I agree, and maybe it's the position now that he feels number one in the team. No, maybe he don't have that feeling before with Pierre, and now with Nick, maybe he have a step in that role. And when you are confident and you know that the team is behind you, maybe he needs that, and he's driving very well. I think it's, for me, because I don't know much, maybe from long time ago, but one of the mentally strong drivers from Japan, I think, and talented. I remember when he started, blaming on the radios, and that personality is not very common in a Japanese driver, no? They're more gentle. Then he came down, then he's starting to pick up pace and speed, and I like him. I mean, I think he, as you mentioned, I think is starting to surprise a lot of people.
And of course, his racing team, AlphaTauri, was in the news as we came into the weekend, following, confirmation that Franz Tost is going to step aside at the end of the year and make way for Laurent Mekies and Peter Bayer, who formerly was at the FIA. I caught up with Franz at the start of the weekend just to talk to him about why he's stepping aside.
Earlier or later, you have to leave, I think 18 years is a long time, but it's not the 18 years. You must not forget, I am now 67 years old, and I always said to myself, I don't want to be a guy, if I am once in the leading position, to glue on my seat. I always said to myself, if you come close to the 70s, leave your seat and give the chance to young people, motivated people, enthusiastic people, more experienced people, and this is the case now with the replacement. Laurent Mekies is coming as a team principal, and Peter Bayer will be the CEO. This is a fantastic solution, and I am more than happy about this, to have these two leading the team in the future to another level.
What state are you going to leave the team in?
At the end of the year, and then we will see. I hope that we will improve our performance. We are pushing very hard because I don't accept that we are running around at the back of the field. I want that our cars are at least in the points, and this of course is the biggest target from my side now, that we improve our performance and hopefully that we will finish in the Constructors' Championship in a better position as last year.
And what about Faenza? Let's compare the Faenza of today to the one that Red Bull took over back at the end of 2005.
The first time when I came there, I was shocked, because it was really by far not the infrastructure I expected from a Formula One team. And, everything started quite simple. Dietrich Mateschitz called me and said, now you go to Italy. And the pillars were quite easy. First of all, to use synergies with Red Bull technology, because Mateschitz correctly said, I don't want to build up the infrastructure for two teams from the engineering side. You just take everything over from Red Bull Racing. And the second pillar is to educate young drivers. Okay, that means 2006 we just took over the cars from Red Bull Racing, which they raced the year before. And in those days, was the change to the 8-cylinder. And I remember back that we got an air restrictor because we had the V10 in there. Yeah, worked everything well. In 2007, we got the first possibility to work together also with Adrian Newey. And in 2008, we had the Adrian Newey car. It was a 100% car from Adrian Newey. We just had another engine. We had the Ferrari engine and they had the Renault engine. And because some of our competitors already in those days were totally against this solution, but we had then a very successful season with the victory of Sebastian Vettel in Monza. And, every medal has two sides. The one side is we won the race, fantastic, but the other side is our opponents were quite upset and FIA changed the regulation from one day to the next day. That means from 2029 and then onwards, we had to design the car by ourselves. But we by far did not have the infrastructure for this. And this was a very interesting challenge to bring the people to find first of all people A for the design office, then B for the production, then C also for aerodynamic. And it was an interesting time, but a really, really very challenging time. And I remember back that we had to build up containers because we simply didn't have a place for people. And then we bought an old building, made it new, renovated it, and where we have now our main headquarters. Yeah? So, and then year by year we made steps forward, especially on infrastructure, just improving everything a little bit. Yeah? And it worked then quite well. Then there was the change to AlphaTauri in 2020 from Toro Rosso, which was also another new step for us, because now we were the ambassador from a company, in this case from AlphaTauri, from the fashion part, and it was very interesting. And then in 2020 we won the second Grand Prix with Pierre Gasly in Monza, which was of course a highlight. And now with the new regulation change, we struggled a little bit last year with the car already. This year it's getting better. We reshuffled the aero department, and I'm quite optimistic that during this season we'll improve the performance, and that hopefully we will come back to an acceptable position in the Constructors' Championship, which is within the first 7.
Is there any reason why this team can't win races on merit, on its own, in the future?
In the future, I hope the team will win races. Yeah? We are working with young drivers, and if you look back, we sometimes had even 2 new drivers per season, and with rookies you can't win a race. If you look to the current starting grid, the first 4 teams are so strong, from the technical side, but also from the driver's side, that a rookie will not come there and just win against them. You know, I remember back, Sebastian Vettel was driving for us. He won then later races and championships. Also, he need a couple of years to get familiar with Formula One. The same with Max Verstappen. And Formula One is much more difficult than people from the outside think, to understand everything. From the technical side, B, from the driving side, C, from, for example, the marketing, press work and everything. You have to get a good balance, not to lose too much energy and be tired on Sunday when the race starts. Then from the technical side, to understand the tires, to understand the aerodynamic, which influence does the mechanical side have. You have to educate the drivers to understand this, and this takes time. And I always say, until a driver knows what's going on in Formula One, he needs 3 years. Why? The first year is just flying away. Drivers come to the track, everything is new for them, even if they raced beforehand with a Formula 2 or Formula 3 car. But with a Formula 1, it's a completely different feeling and a different level of driving and speed. And this race here in Baku, we have the first sprint race, and the rookies really don't have an easy time, because they have just FP1 and then they have to go into the qualifying. Now someone will say, yeah, but they know where are the corners. Of course they know where are the corners, but the grip level, it's so difficult to assume the correct grip level and to get most out of it with the braking points, with the turning in points, with acceleration, not to overdrive the car. Most often the rookies make the mistake to overdrive the car. They think, now is the qualifying, I must brake later, I must push harder, and then of course they make mistakes. But this they have to learn, because the grip level is not always the same. Sometimes you have more sunshine, sometimes you have less sunshine, sometimes you have tailwind, sometimes you have side wind, sometimes you have wind from the back. This has everything a big influence on braking, for example, and of the behavior of the car. And you have to learn this, you have to experience this. And this is something they do in the first. In the second year, they got a little bit more familiar with everything. In the third year, they start to understand, what are the tires doing? What is the aerodynamic doing? How can I change it? What do I have to change to make it better? And then from the second part of the third year onwards and the fourth year, they should be prepared to win races or to be in a position to fight against the others.
So friends, it's a very intense life in Formula One. What are you going to miss about it? And what are you going to do with all your free time?
First of all, I will miss Formula One because I love Formula One. I will miss many of the people, not all of them, but many of the people here in the paddock, because there are some good friends. And what do I do? First of all, I go skiing in winter time, because I haven't been skiing the last couple of years with this calendar, because the best time for skiing is February, March, and there we are racing, even not in Europe, far away. And summertime I will be in the mountains, climbing, walking, and so on and so on. Also, don't be afraid. I have a lot of plans in my head, and I will not have a boring time. But I will miss Formula One, of course.
Will we still see you at races?
We will see. Minslav, Red Bull offered me consultant program. We have to discuss this in detail. But I for sure will not be at every race because there is Peter, there is Laurent, and I don't want to be there for advising or what. They know by themselves what to do. They don't need me.
And you've got skiing to do.
I have to go skiing, exactly.
So Franz Tost there, 18 years in charge, the first team principal change they've had in the team's history. I mean, what do you make of it?
He did a big things with the team. Also, you know, the win with Seb, the win with Pierre. I mean, he knows how to drive young drivers, how to push them. The Red Bull Drivers Academy is very, very tough, and he managed to get all the drivers more or less all of them, you know, Carlos, Max, Seb, and I think he did a great job. I don't know exactly, maybe you know more, the reasons why he's stepping down, but I think we're gonna, at least, everybody's gonna remember him like building drivers, you know, I don't know if it's the right word, but construction drivers, you know, mentally strong, and the way there were a lot of them that they don't make it, but the ones who make it, they step on Toro Rosso, they really prove that it's a good step or ladder to Formula One to the top. And he's part of it. I mean, he's part of it.
It's a really good point. I think the drivers that have gone on from Toro Rosso, the drivers who have got on with Franz Tost and have learned from him are the ones who have invariably gone on to have great success in Formula One. There is a direct correlation.
And he's he's kind of, in this sport you have to be like that. You know, he's very strict, very tough. I mean, he's very direct when you ask him something, you know, it's not very common. It's like kind of the same line of Dr. Helmut Marko, I think, maybe. And I think that pays off, no, in this case. And Laurent is going back to Minardi. He was in Minardi, no?
Yeah, started at Minardi.
Yeah, Minardi, and he's going back home too.
There's more to come from the Azerbaijan paddock in just a moment. I want to give a shout out to our favourite skincare aficionados, Caldera Lab. Backed by a leading clinical trial where 9 out of 10 men experienced healthier and visibly improved skin, Caldera Lab has the tools to help you unlock your confidence and make a lasting first impression. Today we have an exclusive offer so you can try for yourself why so many men trust Caldera Lab for their skincare needs. Use the code NATION at calderalab.com for 20% off their best products. Caldera Lab creates high-performance men's skincare products by combining pharmaceutical-grade science along with nature's purest and most potent ingredients. Aging is inevitable, there's no avoiding it, but it's not unusual to have concerns about your skin. I definitely always try to make a little extra effort if I know I'm going to be on camera, so I'm always happy to learn about new products like this. Step in the Regimen Bundle from Caldera Lab, a twice-a-day routine to transform your skin. Start your day with the Clean Slate, a balancing plant-based cleanser which will leave you feeling refreshed before applying the base layer. This nutrient-dense moisturizer hydrates your skin but leaves you with a matte finish so you don't need to worry about having an unnatural shine when you leave the house. Then all that's left is to apply the Good, a multifunctional serum best applied before you go to sleep that will take care of the fine lines and wrinkles, leaving your skin looking tighter and smoother. And if dark circles and puffiness around your eyes is something you're worried about, I suggest you try their rejuvenating eye serum, the Icon. Caldera Lab is on a mission to better men's skincare around the world and prides itself on clean ingredients and doing right by their customers and the planet we live in. Get 20% off with our code NATION at calderalab.com. That's 20% off at calderalab.com by using the code NATION. Take your skincare to the next level with Caldera Lab. Well, what a day. What a weekend. The one thing we didn't really cover with Damon before he's probably in the air as we speak. I know how Damon travels, but
he's a fast driver, no? He's a world champion.
Yes. Look, Juan, what was your take on the sprint weekend here in Baku?
I like the idea of the sprint shootout. It was very fast, half an hour, you know, with a lot of action. I don't know if I will put the sprint shootout on Fridays with the FP1 and then Saturday the main quali for the race on Sunday. Maybe, I don't know. Because if not, it's like the Saturday is completely different from the whole weekend. It's like apart. You know, you have FP1 quali for Sunday, and then the Saturday, if you put it apart, it doesn't make any change. But if you put the shootout on Friday, maybe you get more attention to the quali on Saturday. I don't know. It's my point of view. But I think they have to do some changes, like the tire allocation, or why it's mandatory to use a new set of tire, and then you have Lando or Yuki sitting out of the Q3. Imagine if another team decide to do the same, then you have less cars. I don't know. It happens. Maybe watching this first weekend, they have the chance, and you know we can do changes now if they all more or less agree, and I think they should do something. Oh, and the last one, sorry. I don't think for the show is fine to start a sprint weekend in a street race circuit. But I don't know, for the team's damages, cost and everything, you want the show, crashes and things, but maybe you should start, and more if it's some changes, the sprint weekend in a regular track.
Well, of course, next time out, it is Austria. You're going to get your wish when that's the next sprint weekend. We've got 5 more to go. For my 2 penneth, I agree. I think it's been a success. I like the changes that they've made. The only change I'd probably make, actually, is to the part fermé regulations. I think we should free that up a little bit. But I like the format. I like the intensity of it. Esteban Ocon was talking about that earlier in the show. So well done, Formula One. Well done to the FIA. I think they've done an amazing job. While you and I were having a lovely Easter at home, Juan, they were busy sorting out these regulations. Steve Nielsen at the FIA was telling me that that's how he spent his Easter. So everyone worked incredibly hard to get it done, and hats off to everybody involved. Let's quickly throw it forward to Miami. Can you see anyone beating Red Bull?
Not in the short time, I think. But it's kind of it is a street circuit race, and you're going to have a lot of walls also very close, and there's some tweaks now they did in the track.
The marina's going to have water in it.
Yeah, and also we're going to have a different paddock.
We're going to be inside the stadium.
I mean, that's exciting because it was so crowded and celebrities everywhere. There was no space.
I think there's going to be plenty of celebrities
more,
again.
Maybe, and they're going to have the chance to at least have more room and space. But going to the racetrack itself, I think we can see, but we saw the performance also from Red Bull last year. Imagine this year with this RB19. But maybe some rain, that this time of the year, Miami can rain.
The whole track was underwater a month ago, wasn't it?
That's right.
So
And
not too much rain.
Sometimes that kind of things can alter a little bit. But if not, I think Red Bull for now will be unbeatable.
Checo or Max?
Of course. I mean, I respect and admire Max because, listen, 81 podiums now today, but my heart is with Checo, and if I see Checo very, very believe in himself and his team, his side of the box, and that's, if you have that confidence that you can win, there's no team orders today, nothing to do, push, I think Checo's going to take the chance. I don't know how consistent he have to be. You know what happened in 2016 with Nico and Lewis, and at one point Lewis relaxed a little bit and Nico had that opportunity and he boom, and maybe Checo have the same chance. What happened if Checo wins again and Max retires, and then and then you start building up that confidence. And sorry, the Max fans.
We have lots of Max fans.
Oh, and Max is going to hear and say, no, nobody changes to Juan. But anyway.
It's going to be very close between them. They're both driving beautifully. I think we've had that confirmed this year in the 4 races we've had so far. And Checo has raised his game, as Helmut told us right at the start of the podcast. And Max Verstappen needs no introduction. So let's look forward to a stunning race in Miami. But for now, it's been a brilliant weekend here in Baku. And Juan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom.
So the top 10 looked like this. Sergio Perez took his 2nd win of 2023, his 6th in Formula One. Max Verstappen was 2nd and Charles Leclerc 3rd, taking his first podium of this season. In 4th was Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz was 5th and Lewis Hamilton, the lead Mercedes, in 6th. In 7th came Lance Stroll with George Russell 8th, he also set fastest lap. Lando Norris was 9th, and rounding out the top 10 for a 2nd race in a row, Yuki Tsunoda. In the Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen still leads with 93 points, but Sergio Perez in 2nd has closed the gap to just 6 with 87. Fernando Alonso is 3rd with 60, then come Lewis Hamilton 4th, Carlos Sainz 5th, Charles Leclerc is now 6th after that podium in Baku, George Russell 7th, Lance Stroll 8th, Lando Norris 9th, and Nico Hülkenberg rounds out the top 10 with 6 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull Racing have a commanding lead after just 4 races. They have 180 points, with Aston Martin 2nd on 87. Then come Mercedes 3rd, Ferrari 4th, McLaren 5th, Alpine 6th, Haas 7th, Alfa Romeo 8th, AlphaTauri 9th, and Williams are still 10th, with just 1 point after Alex Albon's 10th place finish in Bahrain. Well, that's how the real championships are standing. Let's now check in with our F1 Fantasy League. Our drivers for F1 Nation Racing this weekend were Verstappen, Alonso, Russell, Piastri and Yuki Tsunoda, and our constructors were Red Bull and Aston Martin. So overall, not a bad weekend for us. Both Red Bull drivers did us proud, as did Alonso in 4th place, George in 8th and Yuki in 10th. And the good news is that we can do it all again in Miami in less than a week's time. And remember, you can join our league at any time to compete against us and other listeners. Search for the F1 Nation World Championship. And if you're not playing yet, it's not too late to join. And it's totally free. Just search online for F1 Fantasy to sign up. Then choose your constructors and drivers using a $100 million budget. Well, that's it from us for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will, of course, be back next Monday with our review of the 2023 Miami Grand Prix, so please look out for that. But for now, F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studio.